Hey everyone, it's amazing to see so many people in the chat and watching the stream and everything. We're over 340 viewers right now, which is fantastic. Anyway, all of you are our special guests today, so welcome. Let's maybe quickly start with a little bit of housekeeping. This stream is being recorded, so if you just return to the current URL, you can always follow along what has been going on. If you have any questions, please use the chat. If you just want to discuss something, ask something, whatever, dump it in there. And while we are in here, do give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel if you're interested in any JetBrains news in the future. Now, why are we all here? For over 22 years, JetBrains has been creating a lot of fantastic developer experiences for various languages. We have IntelliJ, we have WebStorm, we have PHP Storm, Rider, ReSharper, all of those. And I don't think any of those tools would have been possible without our loyal and passionate developer community, meaning you. So we do want to thank everyone here in the stream, but also everyone using our products and tools for being part of that journey. It's fantastic to have you there. Thank you for cheering us on, advocating for our products, and pushing us where we could also be better. But now comes the time where we want your help, we need your help. Not everyone in the community has experienced the joy of working with the JetBrains tools, and we want to change this. We want to include more developers into our growing JetBrains and .NET and game development community, and this is where you come in.
Yeah, and as speaking of .NET development, our tool for .NET is Rider. I would say it's the most loved IDE, not just for .NET, but also for game development, with the same experience you can get on across the different operating systems, Mac OS, Linux, and Windows. And with Rider, you can build all your enterprise-grade applications for mobile, web, desktop, the cloud, and of course also the support for gaming engines like Unity, Godot, and Unreal. And we want to give you our fastest growing IDE for you to try it.
So that brings us to the big news why everyone is here. Today, we are happy to announce that we are introducing our free non-commercial licensing model to JetBrains Rider and WebStorm. So for folks who have been in the JavaScript Day stream right now, also going on JetBrains TV, you might have heard the news before, but if you want to learn more about WebStorm, do check out the website and do check out that stream as well. And also remember, if you're using Rider or you're new to Rider, all of the front-end web development tooling that WebStorm has to offer is also part of JetBrains Rider.
Yeah, so that's fantastic news. But what do we mean by non-commercial? Basically, it means that you can use Rider to learn a new .NET language, such as C# or F#. If you see a course that looks interesting, you can now use sort of professional-grade tools to follow along, which is pretty fantastic. You can also use it to learn game engines like Unity, Unreal, and Godot, because Rider is a fantastic tool for game dev too, as well. Perhaps the most innovative game development IDE that we've got out there. It's also free for hobby development, such as practicing code, taking part in things like Hacktoberfest or Advent of Code, and that also includes open source projects too. So if you're working on an open source project, you can use Rider for non-commercial for that too. We also want to make it free for content creators. So if you're wanting to create a course or stream with great developer tools and experience the productivity of a professional grade IDE, then you can do so now with Rider for non-commercial. For commercial use, we've still got the existing licenses available for individuals and organizations. Okay, so not quite the boring details, thanks, but this is kind of the TLDR for the small print. Firstly, this isn't a new edition of Rider. It's the same IDE you get for paid licenses for individuals or organizations. It's the same IDE, the same features, the same everything, so nothing's been cut. This is Rider. Secondly, the new license needs the latest version of Rider, which is 2024.2.7. It's just been released, so you can go and download it now and start to use this. The free license will only work in this version and of course future versions. To get started, you just need to select the non-commercial item in the license dialog, register with your JetBrains account, and then accept the user agreement and sending of anonymous usage statistics, just like we do with the early access preview builds. And then you're good to go. That's it. That's all you need to do. You can start using and enjoying Rider. If you do want to move to do some commercial work, you can move between the licenses there as well. So you can move up to an individual or an organization license there as well. So just get in touch with us about that. And finally, if you've got any issues or feature requests, you can still send those to UTrack to give us all of your feedback.
Exactly. You are in the stream, most probably because you know us, you've heard through our channels that we're announcing something big and everything. So there's a big chance you're already using Rider. But again, we want others to also know about this announcement, know about Rider and so on. So it would be fantastic if you could go out there on social media, talk to your friends, talk to your enemies, and encourage all of them to try out Rider. And I am showing my age with this meme, but this is the moment of free Rider. Tell everyone about this change in our licensing. Help us spread the word. We have a nice URL called jb.gg/free Rider that you can use to share anything in this news. Now, for those who don't know Rider yet, or if you have your friends and you bring them to this video, why is Rider awesome? What is so cool about this tool? Let's maybe in the next couple of minutes have a look at how Rider can give you the best experience in .NET development, whether that's full stack development, game development, or anything else. And again, if you do know anyone who needs a quick intro into Rider, I'm pretty sure that our rapid fire demos are going to be most welcome for them to get used to, or at least get a good introduction to what Rider is. So without further ado, Matthias, I'm going to hand the screen to you, and I guess you can show some of the coding essentials in Rider.
Yeah, exactly. So perfect time for everyone to jump the Rider hype train. Roughly 5 to 7 minutes, what I'm going to show you right now here. So I have Rider open already. In the middle, you can see the code already with the editor. But of course, we also have a couple of tool windows around that, left, bottom, and right. Those you can also drag and drop. Maybe a couple may have also missed that in the previous versions. To get the layout you want, and you also can change between different themings. You know, I know developers just love themes, right? Different themes. With that, one of the central keyboard shortcuts in Rider you should know is double shift. So if you're coming from Visual Studio, it might also be Control-T, which is also something that many people use. And from here, you can search for pretty much anything you like. If it's code, like classes, files, symbols, or actions more specific to Rider itself, including settings, of course, as well. And I just want to point out here as well, one example where Rider continuously tries to teach you something is namely the shortcuts to certain actions where you can just learn and get more productive. Of course, you can also assign additional shortcuts for those actions as to your liking. So if we talk a bit more about code, then one of the most effective things, I think, for navigation is the initial letter search. So in this case, instead of typing this very long name, including method name right here, you can just use the initial letter search. And that's, I think it cannot get more effective than that to navigate here. Other navigation options with Alt-Enter and then Navigate to, those are context aware. So because I had my cursor on this type, you can see now a lot of context aware navigation options for the type, but of course also would be possible on a method or a property, stuff like that. Then I also want to tell you, you can go, if you're still using tabs, you can go tabless, and the way to go, in my opinion, is this go to recent files pop-up. So shortcut for that, Control, comma. And you can see a list of all the previous files that I had opened. I can further filter this down if I just press the shortcut once again to filter down to the recently edited files. And from here, I can type, I can do whatever I want to search for what I want to go, where I want to go. So a bit more about code. Let's go to this place here. Reading code, Rider makes it very efficient. First of all, because of its first-in-class syntax highlighting, I think this is just excellent. You can quickly identify what are interfaces, types, methods, properties, etc. We also have these code vision items above symbols and types, where, for instance, you can see how many times this is being used or who's the person who edited this the last time. We can also, if I push a button, it's called push to hint, further augment the code to show, for instance, in the method chain what types are being generated, or down here what arguments are being passed for which parameter, the reason here, for instance. That all makes reading code a lot more efficient. If we talk about editing code, I just want to, or writing code, I just want to give you one example with code completion. Here, start, try, get value, then I can complete for the key that I want to pass, then OVV for, and there's the tooltip a little bit in a way, outvar variable, and then finally I can convert this into an if statement with postfix templates. That was just really quick and nice to write, I would say. Writer also helps you write better code. If I just copy that code over to the constructor, you probably are aware already that this is not initialized yet, but writer tells you. Writer tells you about those things, null reference analysis, possible null reference exception here, makes it more obvious. All those inspections can also help you, and that's why I love them so much. They help you for new .NET versions to migrate to new language features. For instance, in the next version, we're going to get a new escape sequence. You can already see that all those outdated by then sequences are highlighted. And I can just go here and just fix this in my whole solution without pretty much effortless. It takes a second, and then I'm good, and I just migrate it to a new language feature. This whole code analysis, it's also worth knowing that it incorporates Roslyn for analyzers, for fixes, but also for source generators, of course. And what I really like also is this solution-wide analysis down here. And it's just a small icon that gives you an indicator of what state your solution is currently in. So for instance, if I had an error, I don't need to build, I just see right there, there's an indicator that would say there's an error in your solution, and I can just click there and jump to that error. About refactorings, they're just really quick. Those are also context aware. You just go to something that you want to refactor, Alt-Enter, refactor this, and then you have a list of options of refactorings. From most commonly used, I guess, extract interfaces, renaming, changing signatures of methods, pulling up or pushing down members along the type hierarchy, lots of things here. With that, I want to go to unit testing. And of course, Writer supports all the major test frameworks that you can think of. You can, from here, run your tests, debug them, profile or cover them, not just through this quick list here, but also through the gutter icon or keyboard shortcut, if you remember that. I would just debug that, and in the meantime, I will also want to show you there's also a navigation option to jump to the subject, back and forth between the subject and the test. I think that's pretty nice. And let me resize this here a bit. What you see now in this test we attached with the debugger, we have our predictive debugger working already. That's the purple line here. And that kind of tells us where our code is going to go, or what it's going to execute. For instance, I'm not early returning from that method, but I can see it will execute pretty much that whole method. And because I have this confidence from the predictive debugger, I can also use inlay actions like this run to cursor, more confidently, with more confidence. And I'm just here. And once I did that, my code is also augmented with all the different variables that have been initialized, strings that have been assigned, like here, and I can further inspect them from here. And that's just great. In the tool, in the debug tool window, you can also see your stack traces with frames. On the left side, you have an immediate window with, and that's just great to have there, code completion, and that would just add another watch here. That same code completion, by the way, would also be available if you would add a condition to a breakpoint, for instance. Same code completion there. Okay, let's stop the debugger here. The last thing I want to talk about is VCS, and not a lot to say here except that it works great. It has support for all the major VCS tools, Git, SVN, etc. And through this tool window, you can search for any of the commits that you might have. It works very, very fast and has always been working like that because it's indexed. And from the right-hand side here of your several commits, you can not just see if commits are, for instance, signed or something, but you can also see their state on the CI agent if they have failed or succeeded. So I'm pretty bad with housekeeping here. But also, one thing I want to give you on your way with the journey in Rider is this VCS operations tool window. This has all the most important VCS operations that you could think of. For instance, to rebase branches, create branches, but also to rebase branches, merge them. And especially for switching branches, I just want to point out, Rider has this great feature. First of all, the branch switching works almost instantaneously. Second, it restores your workspace. That includes to restore open files, breakpoints, and also test sessions. And that's, I think, I absolutely love this. So that was my part already.
That was
super
super
round.
fast. Yeah, super fast, but also very nice to see so many things packed in less than 10 minutes. Awesome. Yeah, I'll move on to the next bit, bring my screen on, and here's Rider again. Of course, this is a Rider stream. So since nowadays .NET Aspire and Blazor are all the rage, I thought, well, let's make a quick demo using Aspire so that I can show a couple of things that are in Rider. So what you'll see here is the Acme Corp solution that I created with 4 projects. The important ones are this API service, which is essentially a minimal API in ASP.NET Core that I'm using to serve up weather forecasts. So you'll see that there's an endpoint called weather forecast here that accesses the database, gets the weather forecast for the next couple of days, and exposes it over a JSON API. There's also this web application, which is a Blazor server application that just renders a nice UI, makes use of this API to get the weather forecast and display it nicely. If you're not familiar with .NET Aspire, no worries. I will give you like a 30-second introduction. Aspire is a way to orchestrate your local development environment. It's built in .NET. And what it does is basically it allows you to set up all of your dependencies while you are developing. So in this case, I have my web frontend application, which references my API service, which is this one. My API service references my SQL DB, which is a database that lives on my SQL server, which is going to be running in Docker on my machine. We'll come to this later, but just to keep in mind, this is a nice application with web frontend, API, and a backend database serving everything that is in there. Before we go in and before we run this thing, let's show you some coding. So Matthias already mentioned a couple of things that you can do. I'm going to try one of the refactorings that we have here. So the weather forecast that I will be serving in this API is always going to display the next 5 days. Now I would like to make this 10 days. So what I can do is change this 5 into 10, this 5 into 10. There's another one here. I probably almost missed this one. So there's a couple of those. What I can do is simply go into the refactor this menu and say introduce a variable for this number 5, for example, replace 5 occurrences and make this, let's say, 10 days. Fantastic. Already done. My count is in there. It is in there as well. So everywhere has been updated. Works in C#. If you're doing TypeScript or JavaScript, you will see that the same refactorings work there as well. Let's switch to my Blazor project. I have a main layout in there. It's this one. You will see that for web development, front-end and everything, we have support for CSS, for JavaScript, for TypeScript, for HTML, for pretty much anything you might need. There's NPM integration, everything you would need in terms of React and Vue and so on. So what you will see here is Razor Pages, or at least Blazor with Razor syntax, where I can use components. I can control-click and navigate to those components. Inside of those components, I can start using classes in CSS. So if I hit completion there, I will see that I can add all of the CSS classes there. For a CSS class, again, I can navigate to the CSS there. You will see that in my razor.css file, there's actually an override for this one. In there, I get completion for every CSS property that you might know and maybe even not know. For colors, there's a color picker, so I can change the colors and update it in there as well. So a lot of things that you can do in terms of both backends, but also front-end development within the same IDE. So again, I mentioned this in the introduction. Rider has all of the WebStorm features embedded. So no need for you to try both IDEs. Well, of course you can, but if you just want front-end and back-end to full stack, that's also possible in Rider directly. Right, let's run this application. Let's run our API, web application, and that database. You will see that I can run or debug my application. And it's going to start this run configuration that got picked up from .NET's launch settings.json. Quickly want to highlight here that you can add multiple configurations if you want to start different combinations of backend and frontend, or just the backend, or just the database, or whatever. There's a lot of database or a lot of run configuration types that you can use. So you can run JavaScript servers if needed using Node.js. If you want to use .NET Watch on the command line, you can also do that and configure this and then run those in your IDE as well. Enough of this. Let's just run the application and see what happens. So what Aspire is going to do, .NET Aspire, is spin up the application, compile everything, make sure that my Dockerized SQL server is running. And it will, at some point in one of the browser windows that I have here, yes, different screen, of course, open up the .NET Aspire dashboard where I can see my SQL is running, my API is running, web frontend, and all of that. Interesting, but in Rider, you don't really need this one, because if you just want to see what is running, the services tool window here in Rider already shows you that for my Acme Corp app host in Aspire, I have a web frontend, API service, and a Docker container. And for each of those, I can also look at the logs, for example, or for the entire thing, open up the dashboard from here, or generate an Aspire manifest, all of those things as well. Right. Speaking of databases, by the way, I have this Dockerized database that is running here. The Aspire integration in Rider will automatically set up a database connection for you. So you will see that my AcmeDB has been connected. And even with this, or if you have a custom database that you want to connect to, for example, you will see that Rider supports a lot of different database systems, and you can just connect to them, work with them, refactor, query, do whatever you want. So in this case, it's just going to have one table, which for now is still empty. So let's fix that. Go to our web frontend, open up that web front, and see what happens. So this is our Blazor application with the weather forecasts. And now I get some data. This is nice. And if I go to my table again, you also see that the weather forecasts have been updated, and I can make updates. Let's say this one is also Amsterdam. I can make a change there, commit this to my database, and you will see this has been edited by making a database edit. Now, you might have noticed that it's the 24th. We have this free Rider news and so on. And I've actually hard-coded that in Redmond, things are getting warm. I would actually say it's getting uncomfortably warm. I made this edit, changed this thing in a string, apply changes, and you will see that without actually having to recompile the application, I can just go to my front end again, and you will see this has been updated. So hot reload support for Blazor, for ASP.NET, for MVC, for minimal APIs, etc. So you can try all of that there. Pretty nice, no? Right. In terms of integrations, there's more. You will see that we have this database integration. There's also an Azure storage emulator that you can use. If you want to work with Kubernetes, we have support for that as well. And also the SQL Docker container that is running as part of Aspire is also visible in the Docker tooling that is in there. Right. Back to code. For my weather forecasts, there is this class that I'm using or building in an entity framework model. And you will see that Rider also supports entity framework out of the box. So you will see inspections on this location, for example. You will see that there's a possible performance issue here, which is caused by me not adding a maximum length to this database column. There's also support in terms of migration. So if you want to add, let's say, a Boolean property that says is visible, I can add that here. On my project, right-click Entity Framework Core, add migration, and you will see that the Entity Framework Core tooling support in Rider picks up what is the migrations project, which is a startup project, what's my database context class, and I can just say, this is a stream migration, do it, and then we should get a new migration added into the application. Probably going to take a while, not going to wait for this, just trust me that this works, of course. Right, what else is there? Endpoint support. I think a lot of people will be building backends or minimal API or MVC or something like that in Rider as well. What you can do is make use of endpoint support inside of Rider. So what you can do is, for example, add a new endpoint. Let's say the free Rider endpoint. And this endpoint is going to take an HTTP context as the parameter. I should probably make this an HTTP context and give it a type. Based on that, I can start adding some codes. Now, what you will see is that, what did I miss? Yes, this one. I'm not good at live coding, it seems. On my context, what I'm going to do is on the response, I am going to redirect to a different location. This redirect, if I open up completion there, you will see that there's this free rider endpoint, but also the weather forecast endpoints. Rider not only knows about how to work with Docker, with Entity Framework, all of those things, but it also knows how ASP.NET Core works. So it sees all of the endpoints that are here, and I can simply either redirect to my weather forecasts or put the actual URL in there that we have been sharing throughout the stream. Those endpoints, by the way, are not only visible in code completion inside of strings, but also in the endpoints tool window. You will see that my newly added free rider endpoint is also listed there. And from here, I can easily use the HTTP client, for example, to test what this thing does. Look at the Open API definition. There's not a lot of comments here, so not very rich right now, but this is very useful if you want to quickly share something or see what a specific endpoint in your application is doing. Works for minimal API, ASP.NET Core, Blazor for Razor pages, all of the things that you might have there. Now, one final thing in my demo, and then Matt, I promise it's going to be your turn. One final thing is at some point you might want to deploy your application somewhere. Rider comes with publishing support in .NET. So first of all, you can right-click any project that is runnable or compilable and say, I want to publish this one. You'll get a pop-up saying, okay, publish to IIS, to a local folder, to a server, or to Azure. If you pick Azure, you can select a web app if you have one connected, and so on, so you can deploy to Azure if you want. Speaking of Azure, Rider comes with a lot of things out of the box, but if you're using Azure, for example, or AWS, you will be happy to find that there's plugins for working with those, working with storage, working with containers, working with Kubernetes on all of those different platforms as well, where you can see whatever is deployed, work with storage, work with all of those resources. So do give it a try. I do think, or at least I hope that this quick demo gave you some insight in the integrated nature of Rider, where we have integration with different tools, but also integration within the language where we recognize endpoints, where we recognize what you're trying to do so that you can code faster and with hopefully better quality as well. And that's it for me. Matt, I guess it's your time.
Okay, that sounds good to me. Thanks, Martin. Rider's looking good, I gotta say. It is my turn now. I'm going to talk about game development, and using Rider for game development is a fantastic IDE for working with game dev. We kind of want to make it be the ultimate IDE really for game dev. It supports Unity, Unreal, and Godot as well, and that's ideal if you want to start learning one of these different engines there. If you want to pick up an engine in your spare time as a hobby and give it a go. I'm going to get started with a bit of Unity. I've got a Unity project open here. And one of the first things you can see on the left really is that we don't give you the Solution Explorer by default. We give you a Unity view. So this is a nice way of trying to make you feel more comfortable with working with the Unity editor there. Instead of looking at all the solution files and project files and all that, we actually show you the same hierarchy that you see inside the Unity editor. So great, again, if you're following along with a tutorial inside the Unity editor, you know where you are there. If you swap over to Rider, you still know where you are. It's still the same hierarchy and still know where you can find files and so on. Lots of other great Unity integrations here as well. So we've got a log window, which I see someone was asking about in the chat. We've got log integrating with Unity itself. If I just swap over to Unity, for example, here we can see in the console view there, you can see the log information that Unity writes out. We actually bring that into Rider itself. And you've got stack traces here, so you can click on links to open files, click on the names of types and methods to navigate around there. So it brings that information closer to where you are as a developer. And then at the top of the window as well, let's zoom in a little bit there, you can see we've got these buttons here to control how Unity itself works. So we can put Unity into play mode, and we can see now here Unity itself is in play mode. So you get to control how Unity is working straight from the editor itself. And then top right, we've got these run configurations. Rider will recognize when you open a Unity project, and it will automatically create these run configurations for you. So you can easily attach the editor and put it into play mode and so on. So it's now basically just single click debugging. So I can click the debug button, we attach automatically, and it's fine. And if we click this button here, we've got attached to Unity process there, and you can actually see the other Unity processes around other projects, devices that might be attached by Wi-Fi or by USB and so on. So you can do lots of great debugging and lots of useful things there. Now, I've got Unity running here. Let's just, where's it gone? Let's put it into play mode, and it's just thinking. Come on, there it is. Let me just kick off a run there, and there we are. We hit a breakpoint, and the thing I want to show you here is this is really nice. One of the things that Rider does to try and make you understand what's going on a bit better with your game is we add extra information into the debugger itself. So we add this active scene item and this game object item here. So active scene shows you the current scene, and then all of the root game objects that are attached to the scene. And you can sort of dive into those there as well. And you can see what the components are attached to the game objects and what child game objects there are. And you can sort of walk the hierarchy of your whole scene right from there. We show you also the current game objects, so you can open that. And again, we can see the child game objects or the components that are attached there, such as the transform and any scripts and so on. So we want to try and bring the information that Unity has about your game right where you need it as part of the editor, which is pretty nifty. Again, helping you learn and work with that. If you want to create a new file, it's nice and easy. We can just go to our Unity script items here. We've got a bunch of templates which you can use. You can create your own. You can edit ours. Let's create my new file there. We create new files. We're still in play mode. Let's just turn that off. That's nice, right? It tells us we're still in play mode and it's going to cause trouble. So let's get rid of that. And now I can just start typing, and we'll actually start creating the Unity magic methods that we need, these event functions. And you can see we actually highlight it here as an event function. So we know that it's one of the Unity's sort of special methods there. Of course, I can just use Alt-Enter here as well and generate a bunch of items all at once there, and it can very quickly get going and start working with my new game. And with these magic methods as well, I can just hover over them, and you can see we've got a nice little tooltip with the summary information there, quick documentation, and a quick link here to the external docs, which open on this other screen. There we go. So we'll open the local documentation for you there as well, so you can use that to learn the API to understand what's going on in different parts of the project, which is pretty useful. It's not just writing code as well, though. As Matthias was mentioning, we've got things like inspections. We've got a ton of really cool inspections for Unity. So obviously we get to use the sort of C# inspections that are available there, but we've got specific ones for Unity itself as well. So for example, you can see a couple here. We're comparing a string literal against a property called tag there. This is actually inefficient because it's going to allocate memory. So what we're trying to do is understand Unity's best practices and bring that out into the editor and get the editor to tell you when things can be better. So we can also fix that. Let's make that a bit easier. So I can do convert to compare tag and use the proper API for it. Or again, I can do the whole thing where I can change it across the entire solution or across the folder. And there's a ton of different sort of inspections. You can see another one at the top there, a redundant Unity event function here. That's still going to get called by Unity, and so it's going to have an impact on your performance. And so we probably want to remove it. But there's too many to go through right now, so we'll move on to something else. And one of the nice things we can do here is give you code completion for magic strings. We'll do this in several different places for Unity. And we can index all of the tags that are available in your project here and then show them there as values to use. So we can do code completion of magic strings. And speaking of indexing, obviously we index all of your code, but we also index the assets as well, the Unity assets, the scenes, the prefabs, the assets that are being used to actually generate and build your game there. And so we've got this ballistic projectile class here. You can see we've got another link at the top here for to show us that it's being used inside 3 different assets. And if I click the link, I get to see which projectiles, which prefabs it's being used in. And if I click that, we actually open that. Wait a sec. Let's try that one again as Unity reloads. So, yep, there it is. We show a usages window, and we can actually sort of click on these then to sort of navigate around and find and see what values they are and where they're being used and so on. It's not just usages though, because data is, we index the data as well. So this projectile has got a start speed value, and we can change that inside the Unity editor. So if I want to reuse this projectile, I can give it different values without having to change code all the time. But what we can do as part of Rider is index that information and show you what those values are. So this is a really great way of bringing the data that's part of your game into your editor. And so the IDE itself can help you understand how your code is being used and not just where it's being used. So that's pretty nifty and pretty useful stuff there. Now, just want to quickly move on to shader support as well. So if you have to want to write some more interesting things with your games, you might want to create a shader to change how geometry or the pixels and things, how the pixels work. Yes, that's pretty much how it is. And we've got some nice features here. The shader files here, this is using Unity Shader Lab file format. We've got things like live templates here to automatically create a bunch of files there. You can customize these templates, create your own, and so on. We've also got things like control click. If you've got this surface output, that will navigate us to the header file where this is being pulled from. And we index, obviously, Unity's own header files there and bring those in and use them. And if I scroll a bit further down, there's things like more inspections here. So this value here is assigned, but it's never used. We've got things like code completion and everything else that you'd expect there. Lots of good stuff. We also do things with the preprocessor branches inside a shader file. We can see that the way this works, we've got different variants, and we can actually see that a lot of things are grayed out and they don't have code completion. But we can now sort of choose and decide. Let's click one down here. We can choose and decide which one is going to be active, and it will Rider will then update and give us the sort of code completion and the inspections and things inside that block, which is a really great way of being able to work with more complicated shaders and things. There's loads more things about Unity. I'm going to stop there. I mean, I haven't shown you unit testing, for example. There's a whole bunch of stuff, performance monitoring and things like that as well. But I want to switch over to an Unreal project, because we will help with Unreal as well. So Unreal is C++. It's a bit more complex, but we can still help you do lots of good things inside an Unreal project here as well. Again, similar sort of integration. We can do things like bringing the log out there, and we can click on the links of names again to navigate to methods and to classes, and so on. We can hide that, hide that. And again, at the top here, we've got this play, pause, and stop to actually control the game inside the editor, and various options down here as well. So you can really kind of configure it and start working with your game directly from there. Hot reload is built in, so if you make any changes to your C++ while your game is running, we can apply those changes sort of directly using Unreal's own hot reload features. And again, sort of single-click debugging there. So we've got everything set up to help you debug and work with everything there. It's a really sort of useful way. Hang on, I've just zoomed in too much there. It's a really useful way to help learn your projects. Again, as I say, Unreal is a little bit more interesting and complicated with C++ and things like macros. So there's a big sort of reflection macro system inside of Unreal, and like this uClass item up at the top here, we provide code completion and also hover documentation for information there. If I just open and comment this property, again, we get documentation for the property, but also for the values that are sort of passed into this, the specifiers that we're using inside this special macro, code completion as well, again with hover documentation. Now, these macros are sort of compiled when you do a build using the Unreal header tool, and at those points you can get told when there are errors and there are problems, but we can do that a little bit better. We can help you find those issues sooner by running Unreal header tool as you type there. So you can see we've got a problem here, we've got something highlighted, and we can actually see that the blueprint property getter function isn't found. There's an Unreal header tool issue there. It actually compiles it for us as we type, checks it for us, doesn't compile it, checks it for us as we type. So again, moving on, let's go to camera mode. Very similar to how we work with the assets inside a Unity project. With Unreal, we actually index your blueprints, and the blueprints are a similar sort of feature whereby the data is used inside the engine itself, and You've got classes here, such as this camera mode, and we can see by clicking on the link again here where it's being used inside Unreal itself. And if I click this item here, I've got Unreal running in the background. It'll actually bring the blueprint editor to the foreground for me here, so I can actually edit that blueprint and work with my code, work with the data behind my code, which is a very useful way of sort of integrating things together. And if I scroll down a little bit further here, I've got this blend time value here. Again, I want to be able to change this in where it's being used inside my game. So that's used inside 2 different blueprints. And you can see the values here. And again, we've got a value. And if I edit that, and let's just find where that is inside the editor. If I could type blend, there's the value 0.24. Let's change that to 0.87. And if I save that and swap back, then you can see very quickly there, it's been indexed immediately, and so it's ready for Rider to use and to be able to show what's going on there. I'm going to stop it there. There's loads more things I could show. Again, a great debugger for Unreal projects there. Great C++ support, loads of inspections for both C++ and Unreal. We've got plenty of lots of cool things with refactorings and quick fixes and so on as well. We've also got support for Godot. I'm not going to dive into that today. Lots of brilliant things. It's all bundled inside the editor. We've got support for C# and GD script projects there. We can do code completion of magic strings, debugging, unit testing, profiling, and all sorts of cool things there. So Rider really is a fantastic tool if you want to start learning game development. And now you've got no excuse, because you can actually use it as a learning tool, free for non-commercial use. So that's me. Matthias, I think it's back to you.
That's almost taking off up from my next slide, right? So yeah, as a quick recap, we're introducing a free non-commercial license for both WebStorm and Rider for both of our professional IDEs, or many more, but for those 2, I'm sorry. So go and give them a try and spread the news. We would really be happy about it. And of course, you can also learn about all the other professional tools that we have, if they're a match for you and your company, maybe. And yeah, just try it out.
Yes, I will also add, it's been a privilege to have all of you here, and also a privilege to be able to announce this to everyone here. Again, I do think a lot of people here already know us. Help us spread the word to those who don't yet know. Tell your friends, tell everyone who wants to hear, tell the butcher in the village, tell everyone in the supermarket, tell everyone about free Rider. Use the hashtag, use this URL, and please spread the word for us as well. I guess it's time to start wrapping up. If you want more information about Rider, and you don't know about these resources, we have the Rider website, of course, with lots of information about how things work, what is supported, etc. We have a fantastic blog written by these 2 folks up and down there, and Khalid and Rachel, who's not on the stream here. Fantastic content showing you how to work with Maui, with Blazor, with all of those things. So we try to be very active there. We are on X, and we're also on JetBrains TV. And speaking of JetBrains TV, I want to thank you again for joining. Again, go spread the word for us and subscribe to our channel if you're interested in more of this news. I promise that we might have more news like this at some point. Not going to be tomorrow, but at some point you will be happy that you subscribe to our channel. With that, again, thank you for being here, and see you around in our future streams.
Thanks, everyone.
See ya.